With Return to Last of Us on HBO, all I can feel is excitement as well as some fear. The first season of the show had killed it with crazy accolades and some major hype, but as we head into the second season, it's about to get divided. With episode 1 officially on HBO, I sent out my top generals to check out the recent release and to discuss the good, the bad, and whether or not this show is worth watching. Does Last of Us Season 2 start off on the right note? Let's jump into it.
What's up, everyone? I'm Frank, joined with Haki, and this is a gamer's perspective on The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 1, where we're going to be breaking down what we liked, what we disliked, and then later in the show, doing a spoiler discussion. And let's start in this first part, our review, non-spoiler, and starting off with the good. And when you look at this, again, a lot of hype coming into this season. Those that have played the game, which I have, he has not, but he's been a big gamer. He knows about The Last of Us and enjoyed Season 1. And when you look at this first episode, I think they set the table pretty well. They give you the plot, they give you a showcase of new characters that you're going to be interested in, and they matched it pretty well on some scenes, almost scene by scene and dialogue by dialogue on what you saw at the beginning of The Last of Us 2 game. So to me, I think they nailed the part again. Adaptation, they are very similar. They did make some major changes, but you could still see some of the major similarities. They also introduced a new infected in this one, which we always love to see, because that was a big complaint that we had last time. We want to see more infected. We did see a new one in this one. They had a nice moment that we'll talk about in the spoiler discussion. But the new characters, the environment still feels like The Last of Us. So to me, they hit on that, keeping that source material strong with an introduction of new characters. Haki, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you, man. I think one of the best things that they've done just throughout, even the first season that kind of bled into, the first episode of the second season, was they've done a great job like capturing the overall like sense or the overall world of like the post-pandemic and like infected vibe, right? And again, like they fast forwarded, 5 years, their settlement's more populated. There's obviously strains on supplies and just everything from building mechanisms to probably ammo, all this stuff. So I think they just have done a great job just building up the world of, the infected. And again, inside the compound, it's community, but outside the compound, it's just, all hell breaks loose and it's infected.
Absolutely. And with the good, we do have to talk about the bad. And when I look at this episode, I don't find it to be this is a bad episode or this is a great one. It's somewhere kind of, again, setting up the table. So if you were coming in looking for, a lot of jaw-dropping moments or some huge moments, you didn't get it in this one, right? And when you compare it to Season 1, they hit you right in the face with it right away. I mean, things are going on. It started off a little slow, but then things pick up huge. And then at the end of that episode, they leave you with the big cliffhanger. Right, and I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen Season 1 yet. I can't imagine you watching Season 2 without Season 1, but you find out about Ellie, right, and her secret. And to that, you don't really get that here, but the tension does come at the end of the episode. So you're not getting those big, shocking moments, that kind of spectacle in this first one. Feels like it's a setup episode, kind of setting up that table for something big coming in the next one. But to me, if you were looking for a lot of action, if you were looking for a ton of infected, you don't get that here. This is kind of a setup for what's coming down the road. So they do introduce things. I like some of the things that they did, but if you're looking for some high octane, blast you right out of the gate, it was not in this episode. Haki, what is a bad for you?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna kind of parry you, dude. It's 2 words for me: more infected. I know this is not The Walking Dead. I know this, the video game is more about, keeping your supplies and being smart, right? But I think the best part of the show is definitely the conflict between the infected and the survivors. So I definitely wanted to see a little bit more. We did see some pretty good conflict, and we're going to get to that in the spoiler part. But that's what I wanted to see. And I was going to ask this question, and you answered a little bit. But is there a zombie university, where these zombies are getting smarter, and we're going to get into that in the spoiler. That's where, I had my question, and I wanted to make sure it was lore accurate, which it seems like it might be, but that was pretty much it, just more infected for me.
Yeah. And again, trying to keep it non-spoiler light, right? So we are giving our good and bad. We don't want to dive too much. If you want to see kind of our input on some of these other sections, join us for that spoiler discussion. But let's get to our final verdict. And to me, I was going back and forth because, again, they did make some major changes, right, to the lore, or really how the game was set up. and again, we'll get to that, what those changes were in the spoilers. But they did, so aspects they changed, but for the most part, it still runs true to the overall events so far. And now we're going to see it's that setup, introducing new characters, which I like. The way they did it is the one that's very controversial that we'll talk about. But getting to see the new infected, getting to see kind of how these characters have changed, our main protagonists in Ellie and Joel. And then these, again, kind of the danger afloat, both from an infected side and a human side. So they're setting the table up, you know what the plot's going in, so they do that very well, but not a ton of action, especially when you compare it to season 1, the intro to Last of Us in the first episode of season 1. They really hit you with so much going on and then a big cliffhanger at the end. You don't get that in this one. So to me, I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. I don't think it's a bad episode. I don't think it's a great episode. I think it's a solid episode that sets things up for above average entertainment, sets things up for a big moment about to drop. So that's my thing. I'm going 7 out of 10. Haki, what about you?
A little higher, man. I got a 7.8. And again, the reason why I'm at a 7.8 is because they've done so well with that infected world that I was talking about, right? Inside the compound, everything's kind of community-based. Everything seems a little comforting, even though, you know, they might be running a little low with supplies or what have you. But I think, again, they did such a great job portraying, you know, that world of, you know, infected, and especially when we see that conflict with the infected versus the survivors. And again, I just wish there was more infected. I know this was the first episode. It's here to set up all the other episodes, but just a little bit more infected for me, and it would have been higher. But a 7.8, I think it was above average. I think it was a pretty good episode. Definitely a starter episode to get us into the new season.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, guys, we are going to be going to our spoiler section. What are your thoughts on The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 1? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to help support the channel. And think about becoming a member of the Marsman crew. You get some added perks with our new content. And now, let's dive to the spoiler discussion. All right, Haki, we are in our spoiler discussion, and we're not going to go line by line, scene by scene, dialogue by dialogue, but we are going to hit some kind of big points that kind of stood out to us in the first episode and kind of get our point of view on it. And again, Haki doesn't have experience with the game. He loved season 1 of The Last of Us. He knows of the game, you know, the phenomenon that it was. But I have experience with the game. I'm not a lore king of it, but have experience with it. So you're getting two different perspectives. And the first thing I kind of want to dive into is the intro, right? You talk about, first, when you put on that episode, you're seeing a recap of the entire season 1, and you see all the why people really loved it. And then at the end of it, it talks about that promise, right, between Joel and Ellie about what happened with the Fireflies, which Joel lies to Ellie. Then we go into a gravesite, right? And you're seeing these random people looking over graves right here, and you're wondering, again, giving off signals, these are former Fireflies, and they're burying the people on what happened at the hospital. And again, I know spoiler discussion, if you're new to The Last of Us, I'm not going to dive into what becomes of them. This scene is not in the game, but these characters are. And so they're talking about, you know, all the people that died, they couldn't save anybody, and they're hunting someone, and everyone knows who they're hunting, they name them, it's Joel. And so to me, this is a very interesting one. They introduce a couple new characters, don't dive into, you know, their connections. All we know is they're Fireflies, and they're looking out for revenge, and they want to punish, not just kill Joel. The lady crying over the grave wants to kill him slowly. So this is a very interesting thing, very different from the game on how they introduced this kind of new Firefly group. And they talked about, we have to try to hunt them down. We could use another group's help to help track them because we don't know where they are, except the description. So interesting way. This did not happen in the game. I'm interested to see Haki's opinion of it, because I'm very torn. Part of it is like, hey, for a general audience, it introduces it. It tells you what the plot is. It tells you kind of a potential enemy here for Jackson, for Joel, for Ellie, you know, coming, looking for them. But on the other thing, it kind of takes away, if you're familiar with the game, that kind of wow moment that when you saw the game. Confusing, but when you learn about it, that was kind of the shock and awe moment of what this group could be. So Aki, what are your thoughts on this intro here and introducing a new cast of characters and how they did it?
Yeah, I actually like this part. You can obviously see there were fireflies. They had the little chains.
Yep.
The one girl, the one that looked like Anakin Skywalker when she turned her face and she was like, she's gonna die slowly. That one. That's setting up for me. That was setting up the big bad. Now I have a little bit of background just because you guys told me a little bit, but it was pretty clear and obvious. Maybe not who is running the show, but who's going to be, the protagonist or the antagonist here. I did like this. I did like this part a lot, and again, you can start seeing it was the first scene, it was the last scene of the last season, and the first scene of this season where Joel and Ellie are discussing a few things, and Ellie pretty much just says, did you lie to me, or something along the lines of that, and Joel's like, nope, let's just keep moving, and you can just see in her face that she knows that he just lied through his teeth. So that right there is just setting up the animosity between those two as well. So you have a lot of setup. Again, this is a big intro and a big setup to a season where a lot of things happen. A lot of controversial stuff happened in the video game, and I'm assuming they're going to stay as lore accurate as possible in this show. So we're gonna see a lot of stuff happen here.
Yeah, interesting, right? And that part wasn't. So this was kind of a pivot. And they talked about it after the episode went live. They do a podcast after, and they said, well, in the game, you get to be that character. It's easier to connect. So they felt like we needed to introduce them right away. So interesting direction take. I'm real torn on it. So I'm interested to see what our community thinks of this, those that have played the game, those that have not. Do you kind of like that they introduce a potential antagonist right out of the gate? Do you wish they kind of teased it or surprised it a little bit differently? I'm interested to see what they do, because I'm torn. I'm right down the middle. I feel like I understand why they did this way, but also it kind of takes away that potential shock when that confrontation, well, we'll see what happens, how that confrontation potentially happens. But kind of pivoting what Haki said, then you see Joel and Ellie's connection, right? And then you get a little couple scenes, we'll not go through each one, where Dina gets involved, talks about Joel, like what's going on with Ellie, why is she mad at you? You see there's the tension there, right? You see that they're not, where things ended off in season 1 is not where it is right now, which is 5 years later. And this is obviously accurate in the games. So again, you see the tension there. They kind of, Joel's playing it off as a, Ellie's a 19-year-old. This is what happens, with their fathers, even though he never experienced it. So they're both kind of going through it together. So again, similar dynamic that they have, kind of keeping things secret to the vest. Don't really know what Ellie knows. We only know about the promise, right? So, maybe they don't dive into exactly what was the spark to it, but with that promise in the beginning of that episode, you can kind of piece things together, right? So interested to see where this thing is going, but it's not looking good, at least in episode 1. And Ellie's learning how to fight. She's putting people in arm bars, in the barn, taking haymakers to the face. So she wasn't appreciative of them trying to hold back because she's a girl. And so there's a lot. She's learning how to shoot. So she's becoming much more independent and pulling away while Joel is still trying to protect her. He is pulling in the opposite direction. Any thoughts on that, Haki?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting dynamic. And you can start to see, right off the rip, that he's trying to stay connected and she is just straight up trying to disconnect, like you just said. Yeah. So, and I think that, I know that she knows that he lied to him, at the end of the episode, at the end of the last episode of last season, you can just see it in her face, and just from her actions here, every time that, someone mentions Joel, she kind of gets pissed, Tommy mentions Joel when, I don't know, the gentleman in the barn, when he said, yeah, I didn't want Joel to know that I was, telling these guys to punch you as hard as they can. She, got pissed. So you can see the disconnect, in her eyes and just the way she's acting. And you can try to see the strong connect that Joel is trying to keep, and it's just not working at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it leads to another one. All right, one of the more interesting scenes was this therapy session. Joel, gets caught going to therapy. He tells Dina, don't tell anyone, but he is seeing someone, and this is therapist Gail, which I actually like this character. I thought it was an interesting dynamic between them. So you can see Gail's coming in. She's, giving Joel the option of drinking with her. It's her birthday, and Joel is paying her with weed. So she loves that kush action. She loves to get, high as a kite, I guess, during her therapy sessions or outside of her therapy sessions. But things are a little bit different, right? She mentions like, you come in here saying the same exact thing 4 times, and then she just blurts out like, listen, I'm going to be honest, right? Let's just say the best way to heal is to say the honest thing out loud. And she says that she hates Joel because at some point, Joel murdered her husband, Eugene. This scene doesn't exist in the game. Now, the character they bring up, Eugene, is a character from the game that they reference, but he dies of a stroke, right? He doesn't get shot by Joel. So this is a completely new dynamic that they're creating here. A very interesting one. 2 very good actors, an actor and an actress. They do a really good job in this scene. They talk about after she pretty much gets it off her chest that she hates you and she's trying to forgive you, but maybe if I just say it out loud, then we can heal. And then she's like, now it's your turn because you're hiding. You're lying to me. You're not telling me the honest truth. And maybe she's trying to pull out, did you do something to Ellie? But I think obviously anyone who's watched season 1, I think Joel's just keeping what he did for, murdering all these people to protect her is haunting him a little bit. And so he doesn't come out and say it. She's like, did you hurt her? And he's like, no, I saved her. And she walks out. Very well acted scene. Really cool dynamic. Not in the games at all. So this is completely new. Haki, what are your thoughts on this scene?
All right, man, I am happy that it's not in the game because I was super confused. I thought, it was possibly part of the game, and then everyone who didn't play the game, like myself, was going to be confused. So I'm happy that, we're in this together. I thought the scene was awesome. It was just a little confusing, but now that you're telling me that it was not in the game and it's new, it makes the scene even better. The dynamic, what you can see is Joel not wanting to tell anyone. Literally anyone. Even Ellie, not anyone. His brother, no one. That what he did was pretty much possibly destroy the only chance that the world had to be saved. Now, he was right. She said, what did you do to Ellie? And he started crying a little bit, and he said, I saved her, which he did. He did.
Not lying, right?
Ellie.
He's not lying, but he's just not telling the full story.
Straight up. So he did say, hey, I saved Ellie. That's the truth. He got up and he left. So, that was probably one of the best acting scenes that I saw, one-on-one. Probably in the entire show, to be honest with you, but I'm glad that it wasn't in the game and that it was just brand new because that makes it even better.
Yeah, and then it leads to another part, right, which is the kind of the patrol. So Ellie and Dina are going on a patrol. You could tell that Ellie is a handful. She doesn't listen to authority. Neither does Dina. I think they egg each other on. You could see some of the tension that's building between them. They're best friends, but it feels like already that Ellie, it's a little more than friendship. Right? And so they go on this patrol together and they talk about, hey, you see stuff that you can't handle, like just a one-off infected, you can handle it, but anything else, you stay with the group, we send out a patrol. Right when they get to a mart, they see a grizzly bear torn to pieces by 6 infected, right? A gruesome looking scene. And then they're like, well, let's check out the mart. There could be, people we could save in there. They just make that excuse to get away from the patrol, right? The patrol part with the head lady, and then they bring up that Ellie's had a previous relationship with them. Again, that type of stuff, not in the game, but it sets up Ellie's love, which way Ellie swings, right? You saw that in season 1. They are reassuring that right out of the gate, so there's no interpretation here on, what Ellie's love interests are. So they talk about that. They kind of just pull away from from in charge, terribly, just terrible leadership. They got the 2 guys over there, they do nothing. They serve zero purpose. She's like, I'll give them 5 minutes, which is just reckless for anything, for them to allow that. But whatever, let's pass that part, which was stupid. But they go in there, they hear a clicker, and they go in through the window. Dina was a little hesitant, but Ellie egging her on, like, hey, do you want the men to handle this, or can we handle it? So that eggs her. They go into there, and I love this part on here. So they're making hand signals to each other on how they're going to attack these clickers. And they make a reference into the game, which is grabbing a bottle because clickers, again, responding to sound, throw a bottle so the clicker runs to it, and then assassinate it with a knife. And that was a nice reference to the games because that's the type of stuff you've had to do In the second game, you can be more guns blazing, but that was a nice reference to me on the game of part 2, and also really in part 1, where you had to be strategic at times, especially versus clickers. You got to assassinate them, because guns blazing versus them, they're bullet sponges. They can kill you on one shot. So I love that they added that nice little reference there. She falls to the ground, and then she sees another infected. But this is different, right? This infected, he yelled at her to try to charge, and the infected didn't. Instead, the infected ran away. And so when she tried to charge it, it actually hit. It egged Ellie in and then attacked her from behind, right? And she gets bit, but Ellie, we all know, has certain abilities, right, that she can't. She ends up killing this thing, and this particular infected is in the game. They make a reference that later in the council that it wasn't mindless. It actually looked like it planned something. And this infected is real. Now, how intelligent they are, that's not a deep dive into the games, at least from my knowledge, but they are called stalkers. And that's exactly what they reference them to be. These stalkers are smaller but faster than the normal infected. They're usually kind of in the games, the ones that notify the rest of the infected that you're there. But in this one, they're trying to make it, well, are they becoming more intelligent? So a little interesting twist here. The stalkers are real, but I'm interested to see how this kind of continues to grow. Are stalkers going to be this major threat? I hope we see more of them and not just this one-hit wonder, like we saw in this episode, because the introduction of a stalker, a new infected, was great to see. This was one of the best parts of the episode. Thoughts on it, Haki?
Yeah, man, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, like I said before, them setting up just the post-infected world, just real gruesome, rolling up on that bear. I thought that was pretty crazy. The bear killed the infected killed the bear. Dina made that, what was it, the barbecue joke, which is, I know Ellie loved, because she loves those, silly
I know,
jokes.
that was bad. Right. Ellie, don't write that one down. That was bad. That was bad corny.
Right. Which I mean, she liked those corny jokes. She was, telling Joel those corny jokes last season. So, it was a fun little joke there. But yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite parts. What I thought was going to happen was, I didn't know how important Dina was, so I thought when Ellie fell through the ceiling, Dina was going to get attacked right then and there, and, crazy stuff was going to pop off. But it was a very cool scene. I didn't even think that it was the infected that was running across, there was one part where it almost looked like a cat or something that was running across the top of the thing, and I had to rewind it a couple times, like, oh my god, that's literally an infected running on all fours, scooting across things, hiding here, hiding there. So very cool.
Cool choreographed. That was well choreographed.
Bring this back. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's just go to the final part. And again, we're not hitting scene by scene by scene, but the last kind of big one, those that have played the game will reference it. It's a New Year's Eve party, right? And this one was the most like scene by scene from the game that they've done. And it's Ellie hesitant to go to the party, going anyway, kind of Dina pretty much forcing her to go. So she's watching, and Dina's drunk, having a great time. She broke up recently with her boyfriend, the buff Asian guy, and she coaxed Ellie to dance. And this is all again in the game. They dance. Now what's slightly different is in the game they had the former boyfriend watching them dance, and it was like Dina, who's trying to make him, I guess, a little bit jealous. They don't do that here, but Ellie makes the same comments. The dialogue is the same, where she's like, all the men, in the room are looking at you right now. And Dina puts it back to it, says, actually, they could be looking at you. And she's like, no, they're not looking at me. And Dina says they should be afraid of you, right? They should be jealous of you. And interesting dialogue there, kind of, again, setting things up for kind of the theme and plot going forward. Dina and Ellie kiss. It kind of gets interrupted a little bit by another famous actor from SVU that you see in there, the sergeant. He's saying like, hey, this is a church. Like, take that stuff elsewhere. And then he makes, a derogatory term towards them. Ellie turns around to defend them. And then Joel comes from left field and just throws this dude on his ass. Different from the game, because in the game he gives him a haymaker, so he just shoves him on this time. He's trying to protect his daughter, and Ellie gets pissed at him like help, right? So she storms out. Joel again sitting there. Just it's tough to watch as a fan of Joel. Going into this, you know the bad stuff that he's done, but you know why he did it, and so this is a real tough environment here. He's trying to connect with Ellie again. You could tell that even with his therapy sessions, but it's just not working right now. And Ellie keeps, every time he gets involved, she's being a little snotty, right? She's being like this 19-year-old. Everyone around doesn't really know what's going on between those dynamics. So that scene very close to the game. Key thoughts on it?
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty cool scene. Everyone's partying, everyone's having a good time. The old man was a little crazy. I got his point. Like it's a family party, sure, but yeah, the word that he used was pretty out of pocket. And then Sandra Bullock just blindsides him. I thought that was hilarious. Again, like you said, man, he's just trying to protect and stay connected to Ellie. And Ellie that was the point where the animosity just bubbled over, right? Like that was like the breaking point for her. She was so furious, and I understand why. She, as a 19-year-old, thinks she's an adult. Every 19-year-old thinks they're adults, which, you legally are, but, you got to fight for your own, I guess. But, things just got kind of out of pocket just in general, and at the end of that scene, you really saw when Joel was outside on the porch with the guitar. Ellie came back and she was just staring at him and then just walked right by him. Didn't even say anything, barely looked at him, so you can see this is where, things start to go real south for their relationship.
Yeah, and didn't mention on one part, they were pulling up a pipe out of the ground, trying to fix it. You notice a lot of just look like vines and just like debris inside the pipes. But as the party ended and one of them threw, what is a little sparkler? It kind of showed there's something in those pipes. It's not just debris. And you can see some of the fungus starting to reveal itself. So setting up, hey, these are not just, run out pipes. There's something in those pipes that could cause a major problem. And also in the horizon, you saw that group from the first scene on the horizon of Jackson. So things look to be set up to absolutely explode in the next episode. If you've played the games, I think you're getting a hint here. Next episode could be the one that really explodes everyone's opinion, including ours. So interested to see how it goes there. Any last thoughts, Haki, on what you saw in this episode?
Yeah, man. I mean, just to hit that point that you just said, man, my question here is how many fireflies does it take to turn up an entire compound, bro? Like, if it was just the 4 or 5 that was in that starting scene, are they really going to do what they need to do while everyone's drunk, I guess, or over the next couple of days to really turn this?
And let's just say the cast didn't look like, SEAL Team 6. Let's just say.
No, they look like a bunch of Chuck E. Cheese employees,
With that said, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up, hit that sub button if you haven't already. We're going to be covering the entire season of Last of Us Season 2. And check out our latest video on the Devil May Cry show where we reviewed it from a gamer's perspective. This is Frank and Aki from Marsman Gaming signing off. Game on.